Rise, Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. If it's Monday, we must have Pablo Torre. Pablo, welcome.
Jen, good to be back with you ahead of what feels like a deserved, hopeful holiday break. I don't know if you're taking one, but I hopefully will be.
Oh, we could all use a break. But you have been a busy man, making news, breaking stories, creating tumult, all of which you're very good at. Tell us about your NFL collusion news breaking bombshell.
Yeah, this is why I need a break. I have been investigating a story that I think is essential to understanding not just the NFL and the NFLPA, the Players Union, but also, frankly, the dynamic between labor and management in America writ large. And so, what I've done is I've acquired a document that neither the NFL nor its Players Union wants you to see. And this is a very strange thing that both sides agree that they don't want you to see the same thing. And it turns out that this document is a 61-page arbitration ruling about collusion. And so there's a lot of just like legalese that I will just TLDR summarize top level here. But the understanding that I want people to have is that this is the document they don't want you to know about because it's that important. And so the NFL was sued by its players union because of an allegation that the NFL, the owners now, the 32 billionaires who own the teams, those billionaire ownership groups, plus the league office and Commissioner Roger Goodell, colluded to prevent the full extent of players monetizing, realizing their economic value, specifically in the world of guaranteed contracts, which we'll just leave to the side for a second because that's a little inside football, as it were. But the point is, in this document, you have Jen, and this is just the greatest term for a journalist and the least favorite term for any powerful person. You have the results of expedited discovery, meaning you got the texts, the emails, the messages, secret slideshow presentations, as well as witness testimony from the following people: Roger Goodell, Lamar Jackson, the quarterback, two-time MVP of the Ravens, Kyler Murray, star quarterback for the Cardinals, Russell Wilson, now star quarterback for the Giants, as well as 8 different billionaire owners, as well as the NFLPA leadership, as well as agents and executives, and 8 NFL owners, which I mentioned here. They're just seen with microscopic clarity, a 4K level clarity around the ways in which they have solidarity, frankly, in ways that the players can only dream of. And so it starts with just that premise of look inside the room where it happens that they don't want you to see inside of.
Right. And basically, what they were doing is they were all getting together to decide that they were not going to, no one was going to break new ground in giving a guaranteed contract, that is, payment even if you don't play, payment if you're hurt, payment whatever, to the top players. And they did this kind of in plain sight, or at least in plain sight of themselves. But the actual ruling was that they didn't do it very adeptly. So they lost the case. So the players lost the case. So they didn't really carry through on their collusion, but they intended to collude. Why didn't the players want this out there?
Yeah, that is the key question because you're right. So what we discovered is that there are a couple of key instances here behind the scenes where the leadership of the players union, their self-interest diverged from the collective self-interest of the body of employees that they are sworn with fiduciary duty to represent, as any union would. And this is news that everybody, I think, could use if you're even vaguely aware of how unions operate, but also if you're an NFL fan. Because what is very clear to me is that the NFL players already are dealing with a bit of a stacked deck, right? You know, they cycle in and out of the league. They have the shortest career span on average, less than 4 years. The star quarterbacks are very different from the practice squad guys. It's a hard union to build solidarity in. But what is even harder is when you have a new union leader who is essentially ushered into his role via amendments to the union constitution that prevent outside scrutiny. I'll save some of the details, but they're cinematic just in terms of how the president of the Players Union, a former Cleveland Browns offensive lineman named J.C. Tretter, emerges as his character who helped usher in the new executive director of the union, meaning this is a job that only less than a handful, I mean, literally, I think 4 or 5 people have held it ever. It's a very important job. That guy turns out to be the former CFO of Booz Allen, which is one of the biggest, global firms, who also was embroiled. They did not disclose to their members in the largest financial fraud settlement in, I believe, American history. So Google Booz Allen and fraud settlement, and CFO Lloyd Howell is in there. I defer to the reporting that has been done exhaustively on that. But the point being, these guys were discovered to have insulted at least one player in this document that is referred to. And also, they were the regime that came after, the one that filed this grievance. And so, even though there's a treasure trove, a holy grail, it has been called to me, of just intel, this is how the owners behave. This is what they attempted to do via the league to suppress guaranteed contracts. They didn't want it released because it made them, that administration, the current administration, look bad. And so when you get your NFL on Sundays, just know that is the product of the league and the union having butted heads. In this case, they were in agreement, which is
Right.
why this is especially eyebrow raising. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are they not trying to disclose here?
Now, what has been the reaction of the league, of the owners, and of the Players Association and the players to this bombshell?
Yeah, it's been fascinating
Yeah.
because a lot of people have been afraid to touch it. The league, this is the thing they don't joke about, is existential, financial, legal issues when it comes to how the owners are operating behind the scenes. A nightmare is for discovery to happen, as any lawyer can attest. So the league currently is no comment at all, which is very amusing on some level. The players union, it is no comment at all, which is very amusing on some level. But I've now been hearing from players, current and former, who see this, especially on the union side, as a breach of fiduciary duty. Like,
Yeah.
Jen, what's so crazy about this is that those players I rattled off, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, for instance, they had not seen this document, which is in large part about them, until I released it. Now, you can argue here that this is only for members to see, this is only for the union, we don't leak to the public. That's one thing. It is quite another for the very people whose interests are directly and explicitly impacted by this finding to not know what the league had been caught doing in the background. This is just, again, it's all very conspicuous that
Yeah.
this was not shared with anybody. I mean, this is what, and I can't stress this enough. The NFL loves secret, right? Deflategate, Inflategate, all of the gates with the Patriots. These are secrets that we eventually pried into. We being like the journalism sort of media enterprise, the fourth estate. This one is like triple secret probation level stuff because both sides have been preventing you from knowing how the sausage is really made.
Right.
And why is the NFL so good at this? This meaning making money, staying in power, not having anybody ask questions. It's because they are so aligned in terms of what secrets they want to protect. And this is just one of those nightmare ones that they didn't want you to know about.
Now, I can hear people in the background saying, who cares? They're all a bunch of millionaires. What does it matter if you make 2 billion, 3 million, whatever? But I want to stress that number one, as you say, this is a legal moral issue, that this is people who you have entrusted to look after your economic interests who didn't do those things. And secondly, there's a whole slew of journeyman players who aren't bajillionaires, who have 2 or 3 years to try to monetize all that effort, all the years of college when they weren't getting a career in other areas. And they're ultimately the losers in this because if they have a union that is not squeezing every dime out of the owners, they're the ones who are going to suffer.
Yes, this is about. I think it's such an interesting story because it also reflects conversations we have all of the time in real life, so to speak,
Yeah.
in politics, right? Who do you relate to? Do you relate to the billionaire owner or do you relate to the employee?
Yeah,
And so this is not a woe is me story about a guy who got nine figures who should have gotten more. That is not why this is interesting. This is interesting because this is the story of how the ownership class in America operates. And they are
absolutely.
able to squeeze even the most powerful of employees in ways that they are totally in the dark about. And so
Exactly.
as a fan, if you are the type of fan who just wants to know what's in the sausage you're eating, right? That's all I'm asking. Do you want to
Yeah,
know what's in there? Because the product, admittedly, we're football fans. It can be delicious. I'm not telling you anything on that front that is going to, whatever. You understand that there are trade-offs that you make as a fan. It's like, okay, but the games are good. That's okay. I'm just telling you, when it comes to the story of how the billionaire class gets away with it, whether we're talking about big, beautiful bills, or whether talking about 61-page settlements, or rather arbitration rulings, what they are doing is beyond the powers of the employee in the United States. And
absolutely.
it's just
Absolutely.
sports and real life colliding.
Absolutely. And what is so fascinating is enough is never enough. These guys are billionaires, billionaires. I was just watching, because of course I have to, some of the debate on the Senate floor. You said this is like the big, bad, beautiful bill. And Senator Whitehouse, who's really one of the best at spotting this, says, you guys talking to the billionaire could pay taxes at a rate like ordinary people. It wouldn't cost you a day on your private island. It wouldn't cost you a day on your private yacht. You just don't want to. And it's kind of like that. They just don't want to. They want to have all the cards, and no one is going to tell them that they have to have one less card, even though they probably don't even know how many cards they have because they're so rich.
Yes, yes. There's a through line in the moment we're in America. And I
Yes,
see that, of course, in New York City with again, the shock
right,
nomination of Zoran Mamdani, right? I see it
right,
over
right.
there. I see it
Yeah,
in the Votorama thing happening in Congress right now as we speak. There is this opportunity to use the weapons of Trump against him. What do I mean by
yes,
this? I mean that Trump has promised himself to America as the populist defender of the normal common man. And at every turn we see that it's the opposite. And so
absolutely.
the moment for the Dems is, I think, a billionaire moment. It is the
Yes,
moment when you say, you know who actually might be broadly unpopular but has been skating because they've been operating behind the scenes to protect themselves and keeping themselves out of the news? It is that class of people. And this is not
absolutely.
anti-capitalist, by the way. It is merely recognizing that, and this is my forgive the soapbox here. My soapbox sort of message here is that what if we just, as a political entity on the left, agreed that you should dream of being a 999 millionaire instead of a billionaire? We just have a cutoff at some point because
Right,
that's the thing that I think will resonate. We're
right,
seeing it resonate already in New York
right.
City and obviously well beyond.
And what is so fascinating about this is you have now the perfect example. You are taking healthcare and food away from the most vulnerable people so you can sort of halfway pay for tax cuts for these billionaires who don't even know how much money they have, who are spending it like you and I spend, uh, you know, Kleenex when we have a cold, just throwing them away, throwing them away. And that's what we have. And that's why it matters. And you said something about capitalism. Billionaires don't want capitalism. Capitalism isn't going to Congress to get special tax breaks. Capitalism is not getting regulations that benefit them. Capitalism is not, for example, shutting down the parts of the Justice Department that regulate foreign corruption. No, that's not. That is a oligarchy. That's a corrupt machine. That is not capitalism. Capitalism is everybody has a shot. Everybody has a playing field. Everyone has the same rules. It's fair. It's transparent. They don't want that.
Well, this is where, I had Lena Khan as a guest on my show now 2 weeks ago. And I asked her about sports stuff as well as just this broader moment
Right?
that we're in. And you raised such a great point, Jen, that I want to hammer on because it is the language of sports. So to me, the political opportunity we have in front of us that I have not heard people articulate yet so simply, but the bipartisan framing of this is that you want to be the pro-competition party. We believe in competition. We believe in everybody entering a marketplace that is untilted in favor of the ultra, 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 ultra rich who have these secret levers behind the scenes. You're in favor, we are in favor of getting people the ability to fairly compete to make money in a
Yes.
capitalist system. The billionaires are, and you just did a great job of this explanation. The billionaires who we are talking about in sports and in life and in politics, they want you to think that that is what a free market looks like, that that is a synonym. And it is actually, listen to Lena Khan, frankly, listen to Steve Bannon on this. The one place where I would ever say that is when it comes to the ways in which tech, particularly, but billionaires generally, have been tilting the playing field in an anti-competitive way is such an open lane to mix sports metaphors here for the Democratic Party to run through, frankly. And it's the
Exactly.
moment right now today as we are talking.
Exactly. So I want to switch gears, although we could go on like this forever because I love talking sort of sports,
Yeah,
kind of
right.
politics, that
Same.
that place where we operate. And talk to you about, speaking of global issues, the FIFA Club World Cup. This is this
Mm.
thing that FIFA created because enough is never enough. They had to, instead of the World Cup where you have nation teams competing, they picked some somewhat random teams from around the world and they're competing in the United States. Okay. Some of it is unwatchable, some of it's very entertaining, but there are problems because they have them playing in the summer in the United States when global warming has gotten so out of control that it is no longer playable, that you have to have special breaks, special watering, and the fields are not as good as they used to be. And oh, by the way, with immigration folks ready to arrest anyone, people don't necessarily want to come to these things. So, what is going to happen next year when, as I put it, the real World Cup comes to the United States? And did no one consider any of these issues?
It is a global warning now, actually. That is what
Yes.
we're seeing. Look, FIFA, I've always thought of FIFA. I covered the World Cup in Brazil in 2014 for 5 weeks, and I was traveling. Sorry, global warning that I encountered when I was in Brazil in 2014 because I was there for 11 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And this was something that was crazy to me to see because you see the before and after, right? As you're tracking this story, I've always thought of FIFA as kind of like an alien sort of like conqueror that comes into a country, sucks up the resources, has these like almost like Potemkin arenas that are built for the crowds to marvel at for periods of weeks at a time, only for it to become totally useless afterwards. That has always been the story of the World Cup. If you just sort of stay long enough to see the breakdown part of it on the back end. This whole event, though, is a test balloon would be too generous because FIFA is doing this thing in America, whether or not this is as disastrous as now clearly the Wall Street Journal has noticed it to be. And it is disastrous. Um, I, I foresee maybe the most obvious outcome of this being regret. I don't think FIFA will regret it. I think America is going to
Yes.
regret this being the way that, yet again, a global institution run by very, very wealthy, connected, powerful people are the ones to profit. Meanwhile, the promise of "don't you love the games? Here's some bread, here's some circuses." Um, I don't think the weather is only one thing. I think the next thing is going to be what you were alluding to, which is what is Homeland Security going to be like? What is ICE going to be like? Using sports in order to corrupt sports to political ends is going to make all of this feel even more gross because what Donald Trump knows is his superpower, if anything, is just knowing where the eyeballs are going to look. And he sees this opportunity. It's going to be Trump's World Cup in a year that's going to be as chaotic as obviously every indication suggests.
Well, I want to end on a positive note because I have to, and that is Wimbledon began today. And although we have a global warming problem there, they have to take now extra breaks in England, of all places, because it's so hot. Like, when did that happen? Foggy, rainy England. Now it's too hot to play tennis. But anyway,
Yeah.
so they have started. And I think if you put away for a moment kind of the uptight snobbery and the, finger wagging, everyone has to wear white and so on, you can just sit back for a few hours and watch a beautiful game played beautifully in beautiful surroundings. And it's like golf. It's green, it's serene. People call fouls on themselves because it wouldn't be right to take the point otherwise. And you just see some spectacular athletes that do things that you and I can only dream of. And it's my favorite sporting event of the year. And gosh darn it, I'm not going to let Donald Trump ruin it for me. This is sports at its best. This is why we love sports, because I can forget about that and go watch tennis for a little bit.
Yes, I should clarify this too, lest people think we're getting too radical here. I also love the All England Club. I love
Yes,
Wimbledon. I
yes,
love so there are some ways in which empire, which is what I mean, look, it's funny. Tony Kornheiser used to quote this to me all the time when someone asked the groundskeepers at Wimbledon at the All England Club, "How do you get the grass to be so beautiful?" And they simply say, "1,000 years of rain." And it's just like, yes, that is it.
yes,
You can't microwave this stuff. So
right.
the FIFA World Cup, Club World Cup thing, um,
Yeah,
that's a microwave sporting event with fake history that they're
yes,
trying to
yes,
perform as an institution. Wimbledon,
absolutely.
you see it, you feel it. You can't fake it. And what I'm looking at also is just like the storylines. I mean, Novak Djokovic showing up at this thing. Is this his last dance? A guy,
Yeah,
by the way, who is himself a fully politically just sort of like problematic character when it comes to just his various stances. Guess what I'm doing when I watch
yeah,
Wimbledon this summer? I want to watch him. So
yeah,
we can hold multiple thoughts at once, as long as the competition. To echo that thing again, the competition remains real, and we
exactly.
defend that principle, and that's why I love Wimbledon. It's why I love sports. Is that we actually get something resembling a meritocratic tournament.
Absolutely. And I love these conversations, Pablo, because they go from global warming to the oligarchy to Wimbledon and back again, because that's what sports is. It's interwoven in our lives and in our politics. So great seeing you again. I will see you next week when half of Wimbledon will be over. And we'll see what's going on there and in the rest of the world. Thanks so much. Have a great week.
You too, Jen. Thanks.